The 1980s were the decade of the blockbuster. But behind every Raiders of the Lost Ark and every Aliens, there were 10 other films that deserved the same conversation. Films made by directors who were taking risks nobody asked for. Films that arrived at the wrong moment, in the wrong shadow, or simply too far ahead of what the industry was ready to celebrate. These are 10 forgotten masterpieces of the 1980s. The films that deserved more than they ever received. Every great decade produces more greatness than it can celebrate. The 1980s produced some of the most ambitious, most personal, and most technically extraordinary films in Hollywood history. And then it produced Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones, and everyone stopped looking. Every film on this list deserved more than it received. Number 10. Before Heat, before Collateral, before The Insider and Ali and all the films that made Michael Mann one of the most celebrated directors in Hollywood, there was Thief. Mann's feature debut was released in 1981 and told the story of Frank, a professional safecracker who has spent 11 years in prison and has used that time to plan exactly the life he wants when he gets out. He wants a house, a family, a specific kind of ordinary life that his profession has made impossible. He makes a deal with a crime syndicate to do one last job. The deal begins to cost more than he agreed to pay. The film's visual language, neon light on wet pavement, the specific texture of nighttime Chicago, the way Mann lit every frame as though it were a painting, was entirely new to American cinema in 1981. James Caan gave what many critics consider the finest dramatic performance of his career. The diner scene, in which Frank describes his vision of the life he wants using pictures cut from magazines arranged on a napkin, is one of the finest scenes in 1980s American cinema. It established everything Michael Mann would spend the next 40 years exploring. Mann went to television and created Miami Vice, which took everything Thief had built visually and applied it to a weekly format that reached 40 million viewers. Miami Vice made him famous. Thief remained the thing only film lovers knew, all because the film that built the visual language of a decade was overshadowed by the television series that borrowed it. Our next film invented the template for every Caan film of the decade that followed it. Its director had never made a film before. Number 9. David Mamet had written American Buffalo, Glengarry Glen Ross, and The Verdict before he directed his first film. House of Games was released in 1987 and followed a psychiatrist named Margaret Ford who becomes drawn into the world of a small-time con artist while trying to help a patient. The film's dialogue, which Mamet wrote and directed, is deliberately artificial. Nobody speaks the way the characters in House of Games speak. The sentences are too precise, the exchanges too structured. Every conversation has the quality of a negotiation. In a film about deception, the language itself cannot be trusted. Lindsay Krause played Dr. Ford with a specific intellectual confidence that made her eventual manipulation both believable and devastating. Joe Mantegna played the con artist Mike with a warmth that was itself a con. The film's third act, in which the structure of the deception is fully revealed, influenced every twist-based con film of the following decade. The Usual Suspects, Matchstick Men, Ocean's 11. Directors and screenwriters have cited House of Games as the template. The film grossed approximately $2.6 million in the United States. Almost nobody saw it, all because Mamet made a film about the impossibility of trusting anything you see, and the audience that might have loved it didn't know it existed. Our next film is the strangest and most exhilarating film Martin Scorsese ever made. Almost nobody knows it exists. Number 8. After Hours exists because Scorsese needed to make something quickly. The Last Temptation of Christ had just collapsed after religious groups pressured Paramount into withdrawing funding. Scorsese was without a project. His producer Amy Robinson brought him a script by Joseph Minion about one man's nightmare night in Lower Manhattan. The budget was approximately $4 million. They shot it in 40 nights. The film follows Paul Hackett, a word processor at a Manhattan office who goes to Soho one evening to meet a woman he has spoken to briefly in a coffee shop, and finds himself trapped in a neighborhood that becomes progressively more hostile, more bizarre, and more inescapable as the night goes on. Griffin Dunne carries virtually every frame of the film on his face. After Hours won Scorsese the Best Director award at Cannes. It grossed approximately $10 million. In the larger context of Scorsese's career, Raging Bull before it, The Color of Money, and The Last Temptation of Christ after, it has remained almost invisible. All because the most purely enjoyable film Scorsese ever made arrived between two of the most serious ones, and nobody knew where to put it. Our next film begins as a romantic comedy and becomes something that Ray Liotta made unforgettable. Number 7. Something Wild begins as one film and becomes another. The opening act is a romantic comedy. A buttoned-down New York business executive named Charlie is approached by a free-spirited woman named Lulu, who convinces him to skip his afternoon and go on an unplanned road trip. Jeff Daniels played Charlie with a specific comic timing, the rigid man loosening, the rule follower discovering he doesn't entirely object to breaking them. Melanie Griffith played Lulu as pure unpredictability, warmth, and danger in the same gesture. The film's first half is charming and funny, and exactly what it appears to be. Then Ray Liotta appears. He plays Lulu's ex-husband. He has recently been released from prison, and the film he walks into is not the film that started. Liotta's performance announced him as one of the most genuinely frightening presences in American cinema, 4 years before Goodfellas confirmed everything Something Wild had suggested. The film received strong reviews and modest commercial success. Demme went on to make The Silence of the Lambs. Something Wild became the film his admirers know and most audiences haven't found. All because he made a romantic comedy that turned into something Ray Liotta made unforgettable, and the audience that wanted the romantic comedy left before the second half began. Our next film is the vampire masterpiece that Hollywood ignored before Kathryn Bigelow became an Oscar winner. Number 6. Near Dark was released in October 1987. The Lost Boys, another vampire film with significantly more commercial appeal, had been released in July of the same year. Near Dark made approximately $3 million at the American box office. It was considered a failure. The film never uses the word vampire. It follows Caleb, a young man in the American Southwest who is bitten by a woman named May and finds himself drawn into a nomadic group of killers who can only exist in darkness. Bigelow and co-writer Eric Red were deliberately avoiding the conventions of vampire cinema. No coffins, no castles, no Eastern European mythology. Just a group of damaged, violent people moving through the American night, unable to stop, unable to go back to whatever they were before. Lance Henriksen played the group's patriarch with a quietness and a menace that had nothing supernatural about it. Bill Paxton played the most overtly dangerous member with an energy that critics later described as one of the most purely terrifying performances in 1980s horror. The film was rediscovered through home video and cable television. By the time Bigelow made The Hurt Locker in 2008, critics were pointing to Near Dark as the evidence that she had always been capable of something like that. all because she made a genre film that refused to behave like a genre film, and the audience that wanted a genre film chose The Lost Boys instead. Our next film was the Oscar-nominated thriller that Akira Kurosawa never got to direct. Number 5. Akira Kurosawa wrote the screenplay for Runaway Train in the mid-1960s. He spent the better part of 2 decades trying to get it produced. American studios were interested intermittently. The project never came together. Then, Soviet director Andrei Konchalovsky acquired the project and made it in 1985. He shot it in Alaska in winter. Jon Voight played Manny, a convicted criminal who escapes from an Alaskan prison and boards a freight train that has lost its brakes and is accelerating toward a collision with no way to stop it. His performance received the Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. Eric Roberts was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. The film received 3 Academy Award nominations in total. It grossed approximately $8 million domestically. It is almost never discussed, all because Kurosawa spent 20 years trying to make it, and a Soviet director finally did. And the result was too strange, too raw, and too uncompromising for the decade that had produced Top Gun to know what to do with it. Our next film contains what many critics consider the greatest car chase in the history of cinema. It was directed by the man who made The Exorcist, and almost nobody has seen it. Number 4. William Friedkin had directed The French Connection in 1971, which contained what many considered the greatest car chase in cinema history. In 1985, he directed To Live and Die in LA, which contained a car chase that many critics argued surpassed it. The sequence, in which Secret Service agents pursue counterfeiters through downtown Los Angeles and end up driving the wrong way down a freeway against oncoming traffic, was shot with cameras mounted on real vehicles on a real freeway. No digital effects, no closed course. The oncoming cars were real. William Peterson played Agent Richard Chance, a man whose obsession with catching counterfeiter Rick Masters has caused him to cross every ethical line available. Willem Dafoe played Masters with a cold, precise menace that established him as one of the most compelling screen villains of the decade. Wang Chung's synthesizer score gave the film a sonic identity as distinctive as its visual one. The film received strong reviews and modest commercial success, and then it was forgotten. All because Friedkin had already made the canonical car chase film, and the audience for To Live and Die in LA couldn't quite accept that he had made a better one. Our next film was a catastrophic commercial failure when it was released. Today, it is considered one of the most prophetic films in the history of American cinema. Number 3. The King of Comedy was released in 1982 and grossed approximately $2.5 million domestically on a budget of $20 million. It was Martin Scorsese's biggest commercial failure to that point. Robert De Niro played Rupert Pupkin, an aspiring stand-up comedian whose talent is marginal and whose certainty that he deserves fame is absolute. He has constructed elaborate fantasy sequences in his basement in which he performs on the talk show of Jerry Langford, played by Jerry Lewis, and is celebrated. He autographs photographs. He imagines being the host's close friend. He is not close to Jerry Langford. Jerry Langford has never heard of him. The film follows Rupert's attempts to force his way into the world he believes he belongs in, including, eventually, kidnapping Langford in exchange for an appearance on the show. The audience of 1982 didn't know whether to laugh or be disturbed. They mostly chose neither and stayed home. The film that audiences and critics didn't know how to process in 1982 has spent 40 years being cited by filmmakers who understood exactly what Scorsese was doing. Todd Phillips cited it as the primary influence on Joker. Joaquin Phoenix studied it before his own performance. Scorsese has said, "The King of Comedy is his most misunderstood film." He has also said he believes it will eventually be seen as one of his most important, all because he made a film about the delusion of fame at exactly the moment when the culture was manufacturing more of it than it had ever produced before. And the culture didn't recognize itself. Our next film is a masterpiece so controversial that an entire country tried to erase it. Number 2. Mishima. A Life in 4 Chapters tells the story of Yukio Mishima, Japan's most celebrated post-war novelist, across the last day of his life and in 3 interwoven narrative strands. The present-day story, shot in black and white, follows Mishima on November 25, 1970, the day he led a small private army into a Japanese military headquarters, took the commandant hostage, and delivered a speech attempting to inspire a coup, then committed ritual suicide. The biographical sequences move through different periods of his life, tracing the formation of the contradictions that the final day was designed to resolve. The literary adaptations bring 3 of Mishima's novels to life on theatrical sets of extraordinary visual design. The structure is unlike anything Hollywood had attempted before or has attempted since. Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas provided the funding. Philip Glass composed the score. The Japanese government, under pressure from Mishima's family, refused to allow the film to be shown in Japan on its original release. The film won the Best Artistic Contribution prize at Cannes. It received almost no American distribution. Schrader has said in multiple interviews that it is the finest film he ever made, all because he made a film of extraordinary formal ambition about a subject American audiences hadn't encountered. And the country that the subject belonged to refused to let its own citizens see it. And now, number 1, a German director, a Texan playwright, a character actor who had been waiting 30 years for the right role, and a Palme d'Or winner that the country it was about never fully found. Number 1. Paris, Texas was made by a German director, written by an American playwright, and shot in the American Southwest. Wim Wenders had been given Sam Shepard's script and understood immediately that it was about something he had been trying to make a film about for years: the distance between people who love each other and cannot find their way back. Harry Dean Stanton played Travis Henderson, a man who walks out of the Texas desert after 4 years of unexplained silence. His brother Walt finds him and drives him back to Los Angeles, where Travis's son Hunter has been living. The film follows Travis and Hunter as they drive across Texas to find Hunter's mother, Travis's former wife Jane, played by Nastasia Kinski. The final sequence, in which Travis finds Jane working in a Houston peep show and speaks to her through a one-way glass, telling her the story of what happened between them in the third person, as though it happened to someone else, is one of the most devastating scenes in the history of American cinema. Stanton plays a man who has spent 4 years finding the words for something he did that he cannot forgive himself for. When he finally has the words, he uses them to return what he took. Paris, Texas won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. It received extremely limited American distribution. Harry Dean Stanton was 58 years old when he made it. It is the performance that defines his career. The film is almost completely unknown to general American audiences, all because a German director, a Texan playwright, and a character actor who had been waiting 30 years for the right material made something together that the country the film was about never fully found. 10 films. 10 masterpieces the decade made and the world forgot too quickly. Thief built the visual language that Miami Vice borrowed, and then disappeared into Miami Vice's shadow. House of Games invented the template for every con film of the 1990s. Almost nobody saw it. After Hours won Scorsese Best Director at Cannes and exists in a gap between his famous films that most people have never looked into. Something Wild began as a romantic comedy and became something Ray Liotta made unforgettable. Most people have never seen the second half. Near Dark was released the same year as The Lost Boys, made $3 million, and is now considered one of the finest horror films of the decade. Runaway Train was written by Akira Kurosawa, directed by a Soviet filmmaker, received 3 Oscar nominations, and is almost never discussed. To Live and Die in LA contained a car chase that may be finer than the one in The French Connection. The director had already made The French Connection. Nobody went looking. The King of Comedy was Scorsese's biggest commercial failure in 1982. Joker was built on its foundation. Scorsese calls it his most misunderstood film. Mishima won at Cannes, was funded by Coppola and Lucas, was banned in Japan, and Paul Schrader calls it his finest work. It is almost completely forgotten. And Paris, Texas won the Palme d'Or, gave Harry Dean Stanton the performance of his career, and was seen by almost nobody in the country it was about. These are not forgotten films. They are films that were never given the chance to be remembered properly. Start with one, leave it in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.